I'm gonna. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Today is Thursday, October 30th. It's a new time. It's 5:30 p.m. You're used to seeing me, Dr. Tanji, at 12 noon on Thursdays, but we did made a decision to move our time to make it more accessible for people. And today I'm thrilled to be here. This is Dr. Tanji. We're here for Let's Talk Power Live. And we're going to bring on a guest, which I'm going to share and introduce with you for a moment. But as we start our show, as I do every week, I want to ground you in who I am. I am Dr. Tanji, CEO, Principal Consultant of Liaison Educational Partners, where we work to ensure every student has a leader and a teacher equipped with the mindset, skill set, tools, and resources necessary to ensure they get the excellent education they deserve. I also start every week thinking about what I'm grateful for. And today, I'm especially thankful on this Thursday to be celebrating 32 years of marriage. That's right. We've been having 32 honeymoons, and I'm so excited to be celebrating that day and sharing that with you. So as we get started, I want to just share with you just a couple of nuggets and ideas that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking mainly about the power of partnerships. And every week I talk to you about this idea of power. Why do I talk about power in education? I talk about power in education because education is the instrument of democratic designs, and it is no less the instrument of power. The control of information, the shaping of understanding, and the influence of judgment are critical elements common to democratic design, power theory, and educational philosophy. You've heard me talk about that for a while now. And the other thing I talk about too is I give you a definition of what instructional power is all about. Instructional power is an educator's use of their state, district, and building ascribed authority to afford or constrain access to an education. That's what it is. Educators at every level make decisions that are sometimes governed externally, but a lot of times they're governed internally by who they are as people. We see things as we are, not as they actually are. And in those instances, in those small spaces, that is where the power comes in. And that is the instructional power that I'm talking about. And it gives me great pleasure today to bring on a colleague that I have met and I have been learning from. I've been enjoying her book. Her name is Dr. Alecia Blackwood. She's a professor at Longwood University here in Virginia. And I'm going to let her explain who she is and share who she is with you. But I chose her and invited her to be our first guest because her work on the Ubuntu Pedagogy really embodies this intersection between what it means to have power to invite and learn as opposed to power over. So Dr. Blackwood, welcome to Let's Talk Power Live, and thank you so much for being here. Please tell people who you are and what you do.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Tanji, for this invitation to be here in conversation and working collaboratively to have this conversation. So I am Alecia Blackwood. I am an assistant professor at Longwood University, and I do a lot of research in terms of focusing on literacy, curriculum design, AI literacy, and making sure that we are supporting the diverse needs of our students. I am also a mother, and I have been a public school educator for 17 years, and the last 6 years I've been in higher education, working with pre-service and in-service teachers across the state and also internationally as well. And I am the author of Ubuntu Pedagogy, Becoming an Ubuntu Responsive Educator. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, so I know what it is. You know what it is. People have probably heard the term. Please share and explain to those who might be live with us this evening. And if you are live with us here this evening, I see Christina G. Thank you, Christina G., for being here. If you're here live with us, thank you for being here. But if you're catching us on the replay, let us know and leave us a comment. But Dr. Blackwood, please explain to everybody, what do you mean by the term? Go ahead. What is
All right, thank you so much. So the term Ubuntu, it is coming from the Southern Africa. It is from the Nguni language. It is a quality that embodies the essential human virtues. It is about compassion or shared humanity or interconnectedness. And it is popularized by the famous aphorism, I am because we are. The term Ubuntu is the essence of being human through community and mutual care. And so that is the grounding of Ubuntu. But in terms of Ubuntu pedagogy, in what my research focuses on, is Ubuntu pedagogy is a humanistic approach to teaching and learning. It is this idea that we are going to transform, using a transformative approach to restoring the teachers and the students' humanity in the practice of education for freedom and genuine love. It is this idea of centering the humanity of our students.
I love that. There's so much conversation around student centered pedagogy, putting students at the center of learning. We hear that a lot. How do we operationalize that through the Ubuntu pedagogy? Let's start with that conversation, and then we're going to come back, and I want you to share the 6 principles, and I'll bring those up on screen so people can share. But I definitely want to have you talk about, how do we operationalize this term that people may not be familiar with?
So I think the most important thing is to start with our shared humanity, our interconnectedness as a people. This word is coming from the Bantu people of Southern Africa, and their idea is that we are all interconnected. What you do impact others. And so when we're talking about in the space of education for teaching and learning, it is this idea that we are grounded, we are grounded in the idea to make sure that our students, before our students can excel in their academics, we have to make sure we put their humanity in front and center of their learning.
Okay. I understand that. I'm gonna push you a little bit further. I'm a brand new teacher. You work with brand new teachers. We know teachers love strategies, right? Tell me what to do so I can do the thing that lets me know that I'm an Ubuntu pedagogue and I'm doing it and I am centering humanity. What does that look like if I want to see it in action?
All right, excellent question. So in the book, I talk about the idea of becoming an Ubuntu responsive educator. And so it starts with more of understanding yourself, understanding how you affirm and dignify the learners as they come into your space, and making sure that you're acknowledging the humanity of our students. For example, this week I was out in the field and one of my pre-service teacher, a student walked in the class late. She did not acknowledge the student. And so in my feedback, I had to send her that for her to make sure that you want to acknowledge that student, you validate and you affirm that student, and you invite that student into the place of learning. And you say that, you know what, I see you. That action that you're doing is saying that I see you, not just jump into the content that you're teaching or telling the student, take out your notebook and start writing this.
Right.
Engage that student, invite that student into the learning space.
Awesome. Let's go a step further. I'm going to bring up right now the six, I'm going to bring up the six principles. And I see them here. We've got humanity, shared humanity, which you've talked about, compassion and empathy, communalism and collective responsibility, respect for others, social harmony and cooperation, reciprocity and sharing. Take us through all of those.
Okay, so in taking you through the six components, the six component, which Ubuntu Pedagogy is not a theory, it's a framework.
Got it.
A framework that helps us to understand how do we work in collaboration in our learning spaces. And so one of the things that we start with first is to make sure that we understand ourselves. Is understand our humanity. We have to center our own humanity before we center that with our students. So it starts with us. It is how we connect and how see ourselves with our students as an individual. So understanding yourself as an educator. And the second part of that, it connects to this idea of building relationships with our students. Building relationships and setting boundaries in how you are working in the classroom setting as an educator, as a facilitator of learning in your space. You also have to make sure that you unify your class to work together, making sure that you're very intentional of how you are structuring your class to make sure that the students are able to work together. And we also wanted to be able to nurture their minds, nurture the minds of the children, nurture their intellect, be intentional of how we're supporting them, that we're not operating from a deficit mindset, that we have a collective responsibility to work together with our students and for the students to work together in the class. So it really puts our students and educators on the same place. It's not this hierarchy. We are all working collaboratively,
right? Yeah,
together. And then the other part of it is that we have to teach from a position of love and care. We don't talk a lot about love in education anymore.
We don't. We sure do not. It's a topic. We just like we say center our students. When we talk, we say that because we know we're supposed to say that language, but the action steps remain elusive and they remain something that we are still grappling with because of our own deep misunderstandings around love in action anyway. So I'm so glad you said that. That's really important.
Yes, this most definitely. So when you talk about making sure that we are being very intentional about love and teaching our students about love and making sure that we are sharing love with our students, modeling that in our classrooms, because our students are a reflection of how we function as individuals and as adults in the learning spaces. And the last part of the framework is this idea that we use evidence-based practices to meet the diverse needs of our students. We want to make sure that we're using the best instructional practices. And I can remember seeing you in action in our meetup in Ghana at the ASCD conference. And I came in to spend 15 minutes and stay the entire session because the practices that you utilize, these are the things that master teachers use to make sure that they're growing learners and helping our learners to be independent learners.
Right.
Making sure that you're being explicit with your instructions and your directions. And I was just so moved by seeing you in action. For me, it was Ubuntu in action.
Yes.
Ubuntu pedagogy in action, the way that you facilitate and help us as educators to see it clearly.
Right. To really model that I'm going to ask you to do something. I'm going to explain to you how to do it, give you the structures to move through it, and then say, go ahead, Ask me a question. I want you to be successful in this task. And then please turn to the community and work through the knowledge on that. That is exactly what I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to meet each other in Ghana, and it was a fantastic experience. So as we continue our conversation, I want to talk about the intersection of Ubuntu pedagogy and this idea of instructional power, because I talk about power a lot. And what drew me to your work is I really wanted to show that the way we intersect with one another and the way we interact with one another can create one of four learning environments. You can create one that is disenfranchising, meaning I don't want to be there. This is toxic. It's harmful to me. One that is power protecting of systems and people and adults mainly. One that leans into agency development and building, right? It's really important to think about. And then one that's fully empowering. Now, you and I both know very few public education systems or even private ones are set up for full empowerment. So there might be empowerment in places, but not the system, the structure for that. But the idea of building agency through both your work and the work in the book is something I want us to dig a little bit deeper in and talk about this idea of how does the Ubuntu pedagogy intersect and equip educators to build agency. And at church says we are remnants of education. I will use these principles. Thank you so much for that comment and for being here. I really want to make sure that we're helping that idea come together, because there is power in what an educator can do, right? At any level, even if they have specific rules and regulations. We know that, as Dr. Deborah Ball says, in the discretionary spaces, people make decisions, and the self is the filter. So how do we really help the idea of the Ubuntu come together with the idea of people exercising their power to advance agency development and empowerment?
Well, thank you so much for that. And it's so interested as I was reading your book, and I recognize that we write in community. We write in community because this idea of making sure that we understand our own individual power, that it starts with ourself, and knowing that when I say Ubuntu pedagogy, there is a connection with your instructional power because it's relational. It is
Mm.
oppositional. And so I just want you to sit with that for a minute. When you see that intersection with it, Ubuntu invites educators to make sure that we are using our power ethically and responsibly.
Ethically and responsibly.
Yes.
We don't talk about power in education in ways that are operational and evidential, right? Evidentiary. We don't do it that way. And that's so important. I love that you said that we use our power, because if we use our power ethically and responsibly, then that means we're recognizing that we have it.
Yes. And we are able to now elevate the voices of the students in our spaces. We're building the agency of our students, and ultimately, we want to foster that belonging, because that is when the brain gets ready for learning.
Mm-hmm.
We want to invite our students into learning. It starts with us in how we set up that learning space and how our power dynamics is distributed in the learning space.
Right. That's
And
right.
we have to recognize that as educators, and how we show up and using our power, that we are not oppressing our students. And that's a strong word, and I'm going to say it. We're not using it as an instrument of oppression
That's
or
right.
dehumanizing our students. We're
Mhm.
using our power to humanize.
To human, that is it, right? And that is when you talked about, and at Church of the Light Truth said this idea, he raised the idea of restorative practice. And as I think about what you're saying and the idea of ethical, responsible use and weaponizing, right? We talked about oppression, weaponizing our power. You've seen it, I've seen it, and I'm sure we both even experienced it. You know, I talk in my book a very specific instance when I myself was the purveyor of disenfranchising power moves, right? When I centered myself. And that was a catalyst for me. And I've also seen it where leaders in buildings create disenfranchising spaces by their protective power moves of holding on to tight rules if they work in fear. And we both know that when people are protecting themselves, they are not trusting
Yes.
the system or those who have quote unquote authority, because let's be clear, there are clear lines of authority and there have to be.
Yes.
There have to be, right?
So as you mentioned that a story, I was reminded of a story, my first year in teaching
You
in
cover that in the book very well. I loved it. I was like, yes, I'm there with her. I'm there with her.
yes, my first year in teaching in public school in Florida. And I'm going to give you the short version because you can read more about it in the book. So my first year in teaching, the principal at the time, I did not have much support. Brand new teacher. I'm coming from New York City as a Montessori teacher, going into public school. And so this was in the early 2000s. And so I had struggles in the class, you know, managing the students, managing the diverse learners. The principal looked at me and she said, "You're a Black woman. You should know how to teach Black students," and provided no support. There was absolutely no support. And I remember it was early October. She came into my classroom and she did this: "You have 2 weeks to get it together, or else." Needless to, and this was in front of the students. Needless to say, those 2 weeks came. I did not get my act together, and so she demoted me. State certified teacher demoted me to a paraprofessional, took my salary at $7.30 and put me to $7.35 an hour. So
Yes,
can
Ed
you
Church said, no,
imagine?
she didn't. Yes, she did.
And I know the leaders that are listening are saying, like, wow, yes, that was an illegal move. It lasted for 6 weeks. It lasted for 6 weeks. I was removed from the classroom, but there were so many lessons within that. But that
Mhm.
that leader in the building was using their power to dehumanize me.
Right.
And so the new leader that came on board, a masterful principal, I still respect her to this day, Dr. Jennifer Porter Smith, she said to me, "Miss Blackwood, do you want to teach?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she sent me to a culturally responsive classroom management course, and it changed the trajectory of my teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to make the connection here because my grounding in the work, and I said again, we write in community. When we talk about some of the seminal writers that ground culturally responsive teaching, like Geneva Gay and Gloria Ladison Billings, we were writing in community because what Ubuntu pedagogy does, and also I see with your work with the instructional power, is really elevating that work for us to develop our critical consciousness, what it
Yes.
looks like, what
What
it
it looks
looks like, what it sounds like. And that is what I'm seeing echoing in your book of the practical application of what it looks like and helping educators and leaders in the buildings to help or grow our teachers so that they can see that and put the grounding principles of culturally responsive teaching in action. And so that's
absolutely.
what brought me to the work of Ubuntu. And there's another story that how I came up with the term Ubuntu.
Oh,
It
oh,
wasn't my original idea. A professor who researched and studied in South Africa, he saw me teaching and he left a note in my class: "You teach in the spirit of Ubuntu."
and that's where it comes up. People recognize what you're doing. They're recognizing that you are in the spirit of Ubuntu and you're building and practicing agency development, right? You're moving in that agentic way so that students can then really own their learning. It becomes operational when we actually see young people owning their work. I'm going to bring something back up for us to kind of look at. And as we talk a lot about leadership moves, and I give a leadership move every single week, and I want us to look at this leadership move. It's from power over to power with. That is the leadership move. Power over versus power with. If you're going to teach in the spirit of Ubuntu, and if you're going to exercise your instructional and leadership power ethically and responsibly, you must shift from the power over to power towards empowerment. You must move in that direction to really, really understand what young people need and what they want to do in order for us to do what has been called. I know you've been hearing about it in the research. I've been hearing about it. We have to reimagine high school, right? But you can't reimagine high school if you keep elementary in the same stratosphere that it's been. And if the messy middle school isn't managed effectively, then what are you going to do there? And you know, one of our viewers says, it says, we led freedom around the world through civil rights. We did. Let's lead education. You're right. It's time for something new. We have to decide that empowering students is necessary if we want the structure and the type of learning we say we want in the marketplace. We say we want critical thinkers in the marketplace, but the way we teach goes in the opposite direction. Whereas if we look at the Ubuntu pedagogy and we look at it through the lens of power distribution,
Yes.
right? We look at the power distribution, then we will get the kinds of critical thinkers that we say we want. We've got to be able to move in that way. So we've got 3 minutes left. Can you believe it? This time has flown by so quickly. How can people who don't have your book, how can they get your book?
You can get my book. It is on Amazon.com. It is also on Myers Publishing website. But if you just Google it, it's one of the first one that comes up, Ubuntu Pedagogy, Becoming an Ubuntu Responsive Educator. Please, if you already have a copy, get another copy and share it with an educator. And because Ubuntu Pedagogy is empowering, because it starts with understanding yourself. And then we move into the instructional lens of it. And ultimately, we are centering the students. The students is at the center of it. The way that we are encouraging our students to develop their critical thinking and using the best practices to support our learners in their environment, to make sure that when we talk about centering our students, we have to make sure we're centering their joy. And so in the book, it gives you a variety of strategies and hearing voices of vignettes from different educators for you to see that practical application as you are developing your critical consciousness. And you are moving through the stages of developing your cultural competence as an educator.
Yeah.
The book will provide you with that guidance.
Yeah, I love that. And there's a question, is there going to be any training in this? Well, that's a question. Dr. Blackwood and I have just literally had a conversation about how to get together in community and how to work together and partner together to really show the operational intersection of both of these. And I say operational because a lot of times people make excuses to not use. I'm tired of the term best practices, but it's going to work in this moment. To use these practices ethically and responsibly because they say, I don't know how. And that's why you hear me say, how do we operationalize this? How do we make it concrete? What is the thing I'm going to do on Monday morning? And between your work and my work, the most important thing any educator can do, and for us, I know this to be true, an educator is one at any level. The most important thing to do is to start with yourself,
Yes.
because that's the lens through which you see, right? You see, how did you learn about power? How did you learn about authority? How was it distributed? Was it distributed? What's the language of power that was used in your home and then in your community across the activities you did? So that's really, really an important thing to do. And so, as always, as we bring our time to a close, I want to share one of the tools that I always bring with people. I always share a gem for your journey. And right now, want to talk about reflection isn't a retreat, it's a reset. As you as educators come to the end of this crazy month of October, and Dr. Blackwood, you know this to be true, October is that month where your systems are tested. And if
Mm.
you're not ready, it will break your culture, but it doesn't have to. And we have come up with a tool that allows you to plan instead of react. So please go ahead, scan that QR code. You can check our website, and there's a link there as well for you to actually see this tool in action and be able to use it. The other thing, too, we talked about Dr. Blackwood's book. This is a way to get my book as well. One thing we both forgot to do is please remind people, please like, subscribe, and share. That's how the algorithms work. And want to just thank y'all. You want to thank y'all for joining us this evening. Dr. Blackwood, it was such a pleasure to kick off our new time and to kick off with you as our first guest. It's been terrific. And thank you so much for joining. And be in touch. We will be in touch. And we're going to bring you back because that's another story that we want to hear the rest of. And maybe the next time we come back, it'll be a live teaching session.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. And thank you for
Absolutely.
those of you that have stayed and listened. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great night, everybody.